Hi, my name's Emma and welcome to my first booktube video. So today I'm going to do a wrap up of all the books that I've read recently. So I've got 5 books to speak about today, and they're a bit of a mix of contemporary and some non-fiction as well. I read quite a wide variety of genres, so that can change kind of month to month depending on what I fancy picking up. So for this video I'm going to speak about 5 books, and these were mixed between ebooks and audiobooks mainly. So the first book I'm going to speak about today is called A Love-Hate Thing by Whitney D. Grandison. I will try and put a picture of it up here because I read this one as, well, I listened to this one as an audiobook. So I get my audiobooks and ebooks usually from BorrowBox, which is the app set up with my library. It's similar to things like Libby, so that's how I got this book. And it's a YA contemporary between your typical bad guy from the rough area and a girl from a more privileged background. So it follows Tyson Trice from like the rough part of town called Lindenwood, and Nandi Smith, who is who's a girl from a more privileged area. I can't actually remember what her area was called, but anyway, the fancy part of town. So basically, Tyson has gone through a really terrible tragedy and has nowhere to stay, and basically until he's 18 he needs to have somewhere to live. So he's been taken in by the Smiths, who he knew back from when he was a child. His grandfather, I think, used to do some like gardening work or things for them. So anyway, they've decided to take him in and help him out and hopefully kind of give him a chance to get his life sorted again. So that's kind of how that scenario came about. Tyson's just meant to be your kind of rough diamond kind of a thing with issues, which he kind of is. You know, he's had a few things go wrong in his life. He's not had a good upbringing. You know, his area's dragging him down, kind of a thing. And Nandi Smith is sort of, like I say, she's the privileged one and goes to a good school, has all the right friends, goes to the right clubs, is basically set up for success. You know, everyone round about, they're guaranteed to end up well in life, basically because of where they come from. So the thing of it is Nandi's meant to be this super nice kind of pillar of the community. And to be honest, she definitely didn't give me that vibe. It wasn't really, I don't know, it wasn't really put across very well that way. So as characters go, I kind of warmed to Trice straight away. He was loyal to, you know, his friends and where he came from to a fault, which the guinea pigs are speaking to each other. Hold on. Qui-Gon, be nice to your brother. Oh, maybe come over there. So, where was I? As a character, I warmed to Trice straight away, you know, so he had his issues, but he definitely had like a solid head on his shoulders, and he knew the difference between right and wrong. He did sometimes blur those lines, but he wasn't stupid, and I really found that he was a very likeable character, flaws and all. I was kind of rooting for him and wanting him to get a handle on his life, you know. It was he was an easy guy to like. Nandi, on the other hand, drove me nuts. She was meant to be this pillar of the community, super intelligent, kind to everyone, you know, the popular girl, but not the bitch popular girl, the one who was actually a genuinely good person. And she just came across, particularly in the start, as a totally spoiled brat. She didn't want Tyson to come and stay and wreck her social life or affect her reputation or things like that, and I was just like, this is not, you know, this is not really what you'd expect from like a true nice person. She comes from a really well supported family who seem to be genuinely nice people. She's got an adopted brother, they've got a really good little family unit going, and yeah, she just acted like a total brat, like, and it was just like, I feel like it was supposed to be the other way around. Like, I was meant to like her and have him be the one that had to warm to me, but it was completely the other way around. Anyway, the story overall was quite good. I can't, you know, it was fine. It wasn't mind-blowing stuff, but I sometimes don't think contemporaries ever really are. I did enjoy it, but I kind of felt that the story was just very linear. So like there was a problem and they would find a way around it, and then there'd be a new problem and they would find a way around it, and nothing ever really connected that way. It was just very much like they would, like I say, it was just so linear. They would just find one problem, fix it, one problem, fix it. Nothing connected together, nothing was complex, nothing connected together, which I've said that too many times now. But that's kind of how I felt. I just kind of wanted the problems to maybe intermingle a bit more. Like, it just didn't feel like a normal flow. I just felt like, oh yeah, everything's fine. Oh no, it's not. No, everything's fine. No, it's not. So anyway, that bothered me. And Nandi as a character definitely improved, but I never thought she was presented as the character she was meant to be. I don't know. Yeah, there was just something not quite right there. I just don't think she ever came across as the person that we were meant to really like. I don't know what the deal was. Tyson remained a good solid character the whole way through. He made some really stupid decisions that I was about ready to chuck my phone away at points, being like, no, why are you doing this? You've actually gotten like a really good setup here. Like, don't mess it up for something stupid. Like I said earlier, you know, loyal to a fault with his friends and people that have looked out for him in the past. But it even got to the point that they were telling him to back off and go away. And it's like, yeah, you've got to cut ties and actually try and make your life better. But anyway, so that got a bit frustrating at times. But overall, it was a fairly decent enough read. The pacing could have been a little sped up, and you know, there's definitely things I think would have improved it, but overall it was fairly nice, steady read. I think I gave it about 3 stars. Not terrible, not amazing, just a good old average Joe kind of book. I feel like in some places it was a little stereotypical. I mean, I don't know, it just kind of felt like the rough side of the neighbourhood kind of scenes were just so, maybe had some stereotypes that I don't think I really approved of, but anyway, what do I know, but it was alright. It wasn't too bad to read. I was fairly enough happy with that. So the next one that we have to talk about today is another YA contemporary. Apparently I had a thing for those this month. This one was called The Upside of Falling by Alex Light, and again I got this one as an audiobook, I think, actually. I can't actually remember if it was an audiobook or an ebook. But anyway, so this one follows 2 sort of 17-year-olds in high school. So basically, one is like your more, I don't know if I would say shy girl, maybe shy, a little socially awkward, bit of a loner type girl. And the other is your star of the football team, or is it football? I almost can't remember the details of this book. That's not a really good sign, is it? Anyway, your star athlete kind of guy, got loads of friends, really popular. But for their own reasons, neither of them really want to get into a relationship. So the shy girl, she just doesn't really believe in love and thinks relationships are a waste of time, basically suffering the after effects of her parents' divorce and him walking out in the family, and now she just has no faith in relationships and finding love. So, but her mom is a total romantic and would love her to have like a boyfriend and, you know, be a bit more sociable. So basically she doesn't want to date, but she's feeling the pressure too from her mom and from her friend, things like that. And then the football player, he doesn't want to date because he would rather settle down with like the right person when he's older. He doesn't really want to date about, play the field, you know, like his friends do. His dad and his mum, they met in school and they have like this big epic romance and they're only ever with each other, and that's what he wants. He doesn't want to, like I say, play the field and date a lot of different girls. He just wants to, you know, put effort into the right one. But he's getting pressure from his dad to actually start dating and he just doesn't want to. So basically a situation arose where Becca, the girl, was getting a hard time for, you know, not having a boyfriend or whatever, and Brett, the guy, overheard this and was like, basically pretended that they were in a relationship. because he just saw the opportunity to be like, oh, okay, like, I think he just, I don't know if it was just like he saw the opportunity to solve both their problems, kind of a thing. So this obviously led to a very awkward situation, but then they discussed it and agreed to do the whole fake dating thing, which I think can be quite fun. I quite like the fake dating trope, and then like the friends to lovers kind of thing. So that's kind of the way this went. It was like a nice enough story. Again, it was quite wholesome. It was, you know, it was quite cute. I think my issue was they obviously set up this arrangement so that they didn't have to date. They just have each other set up as it. But they immediately seemed to be very coupley. But like, yeah, like not even just like for show. It was like they spent loads of time together. They became good friends. Like they essentially seemed to just fall into a relationship a bit much for me. I mean, I don't want to give too much details of what like the story actually had, obviously. But yeah, I just feel like it just didn't feel like it was fake. Like there never really felt like a fake part then becoming a, is it going to be more part? It just was like you kind of accidentally got yourself a girlfriend. It was just a bit strange. So, but I think, you know, the other parts of the book was like Becca dealing with issues because they related to her parents' divorce, and Brett, on the other hand, dealing with sort of like the pressure of his family being super perfect. So they have like differing problems, but I think the general point was that they both still had problems to deal with and basically had to work through a lot of issues. So yeah, again, the book was really quite nice. It was like a safe read. I feel like you kind of vaguely knew what was going to happen, kind of from the get-go. There was other stuff kind of going along in the background that, you know, kept it being interesting. Again, I think I would put it as another 3-star read, to be honest. It wasn't anything mind-blowing, but it wasn't particularly harmful either. The only thing I would say is maybe the ending wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. But I feel like there'd be two camps when it comes to the ending, where certain amount of people will be rooting for one outcome and certain people would want the other outcome. So I don't know. I wasn't 100% sold on the outcome that was there, but it was realistic. It was understandable why that happened. So it was like another fairly average kind of read. I can't say. I mean, I would definitely say if you like your cutesy, wholesome contemporaries, then there's nothing wrong with this one. It's worth giving it a go. I wouldn't rave about it. So switching things up now, the next book that I finished recently was 15 Minutes to Happiness by Richard Nicoll. I'm pretty sure he's got a podcast as well called Motivate Yourself. I think that's kind of where his following kind of came from. So I haven't listened to the podcast, but this book kind of outlines kind of, you know, different scenarios and myths and stuff relating to finding happiness. Very simplistic kind of topics, but equally well delivered, I think. And you can relate it to, you know, finding happiness in the things that you do, in your job, and things. You can relate it to things like, you know, motivation for doing new things, losing weight, lots of different kind of topics that he covers, and like why different habits stick and why they don't. It was a good read. I read quite a lot of this kind of genre, and sometimes I think they can be a bit too airy-fairy and up in the air, and I don't really feel like they connect to anything. One that I have liked recently was the one by Mark Manson, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Could not remember the title there. But I read that, it must have been a year or two ago, and I liked how direct it was. I mean, obviously he uses quite obnoxious language, so if that's not your thing, then avoid that one. But this one kind of had a similar vibe in that it was just very straightforward. It kind of just, it simplified everything instead of overcomplicating lots of issues. I think some people would find it quite helpful and interesting, other people it just won't be for them at all. I think with these kinds of books, you definitely just need to give them a go and see what works for you. So the crux of this book was that I think most of the chapters had little exercises, things you can do, you know, within 15 minutes to boost your mood or kind of change your mindset, that kind of thing. And admittedly, I didn't really spend a lot of time on those exercises. I can't say I went and used the exercises to do things or anything like that. You know, these certain ones, like, you know, if you're uncomfortable with your body, stand in front of the mirror every day and look at yourself, things, you know, just things like that. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. I wasn't really reading it for the exercises. I wasn't reading it to kind of find things to implement, if that makes sense. There are some tips that I've taken away from it. You know, there are things you can apply to your own life, but yeah, I just was reading it for more for interest. And yeah, no, I did like it. I think I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really quite good. With this kind of genre, like I say, there's a big range, and I just really liked how simplistic it was. So he gave some examples with different studies, and then just kind of, like I say, it was like a really easy way to apply his theories to your life and things like that. So I just thought it did the job. So I started reading this one as an ebook and didn't actually get round to finishing it before I had to go out to the library. So basically I had to finish it as an audiobook. So I used the spare credit from an Audible that I hadn't really pegged for anything else. So I ended up buying it on there and listening to the last little bit of it. So I can honestly say that the audiobook is equally as fine as the ebook. I wouldn't say I had a major preference over either. I think I often like the audiobooks when it's read by the author, which I do like that it was read by him. But there was equally some times the way he spoke was a little bit condescending, so there's that to bear in mind. But it didn't really bother me. It was just something that I took note of when I was listening, but I did enjoy it, and I've already recommended it to a friend that likes that kind of books, so I would definitely say this one's worth a read. So along the same lines, I also read another non-fiction book recently, which was Not That Bad by Roxane Gay. Now this book's been spoken about quite a lot recently, just with a lot of the current issues going on. So this book was brought to my attention by a couple of the YouTubers that I watch. So fly just flew past my face. So yeah, the booktubers that discussed this book and brought it to my attention, I think, were Katie Wismer, Kate's Book Date, I think, and Books with Emily Fox. I think that's what it's called. I'll link them down below. So they both reviewed this book and brought it to my attention. So I wanted to have a read and kind of see how I felt. So basically, Not That Bad is a collection of essays, I think, based on written by people who have experienced rape or some kind of sexual harassment or violation in their lives, and they were explaining kind of what happened to them and the effect it had had in their lives. And yeah, that was a difficult book to read. I won't lie. Like, it's a really good book, and I think everyone should read it. It's got a lot of important, I think, lessons to take away from it. But it's an uncomfortable read. It's hard coming from someone who's not really had anything that bad, God, how cheesy, happen. I mean, I think everybody's had a situation happen where it wasn't right, it shouldn't have happened, that kind of thing. I think so many of us just go, not that bad, oh, you know, that's not a big deal. And I've definitely spoken with friends that have described things that have happened with them, and I'm like, oh my God, that's horrendous. But they're like, oh yeah, but it's not as bad as what other people go through. So it's kind of, yeah, the book was kind of that kind of thing. I mean, obviously some stories were of women who had gone through horrific rapes and abuse, and it was just truly shocking and horrible to read about. There were less harrowing accounts, maybe ones that we're a bit more accustomed to hearing about, maybe in the news or from friends and things like that. But having them all together and having them presented the way they were, I think it just really highlighted how there's a certain level of, can we say, inappropriate behaviour that we feel like we have to put up with, or that is normal for a certain extent, and it's horrendous, and it's incredibly wrong that we feel that way. So a lot of the stories, like I say, were really difficult to read, and a lot of them even challenged my own thoughts on what was normal and what should and shouldn't be accepted. I think the easy answer is none of it's acceptable, no matter how big, how small the intent of the person doing it. Nothing like that is acceptable. But it's, yeah, that was an eye-opener. I do think that's a book that everyone should read. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of bookish friends. A lot of them are not really the reader type, so I can't really recommend it to a lot of my friends. So I'm going to recommend it to you guys instead. I just think it's definitely one of those books that needs to be read, I think. So that was an experience, and I don't really... It's hard to rate books like this, you know. I tend to rate on enjoyment, you know, and this book is definitely not one to be enjoyed. Going on its effectiveness and delivery, I think I put it at like a 4 stars. But to be honest, rating a book like that is incredibly difficult, and I wouldn't really put much hang up on it. You know, if we're going to rate that on enjoyment, it would be pretty low because it wasn't an enjoyable read. So I don't really feel comfortable rating non-fiction books, but that's my attempt at rating it anyway. I would definitely say it's a worthwhile read, good read, and you know what, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, I think that's kind of the point. So the last book that I'm going to speak about, well, it's not really a book, it's more like a novella. Let's Start Over. So one of the series that I really liked when I was younger is the Dark Hunter series by Sherilyn Kenyon, and I started reading them years and years ago. Absolutely loved them, read most of them. I'm rereading the Dark Hunter series by Sherilyn Kenyon. So the premise of the story is basically the Dark Hunters, clearly. So they are people that have been wronged essentially in their life. Usually I think at the point of death. I don't know if that's vital. You know, but an example would be like an ancient warrior who was betrayed, and if they call out with their anger and frustration and their need for vengeance, then the goddess Artemis will maybe appear before them and give them the bargain that if they commit to being one of her soldiers, called the Dark Hunters, then she will allow them a night to seek vengeance on those that wronged them. So basically they can go and get revenge for whatever terrible atrocities happened to them, but then they are essentially enslaved by this goddess. They are nocturnal, they can't deal with sunlight, so like they have a lot of like the vampire traits. They can't do sunlight, they live long lives, they're essentially immortal, you know, unless they get like beheaded or something. They have fangs, so like they often get mistaken for the vampires because of their traits, which I think is quite funny. And then the ones that are essentially the bad guys, they are also can look out at night, but they don't have any of the other kind of vampire traits as the ones who slay them. Like I say, I started this a few years ago, quite a few years ago now actually, probably about 10 years ago, oh god, and got almost to the end of the series actually, and then just kind of got distracted. Well, basically earlier this year I started to reread this series. So the first one is Fantasy Lover. Funny enough, this one isn't even about the Dark Hunters. It just kind of sets the scene for what's to come, and it's basically a sex therapist who has got major hang-ups about relationships, funnily enough, probably from being a sex therapist. But anyway, her best friend is kind of crazy and into witchy stuff, and I use this book where it's meant to be like you can summon your fantasy man out of it or something like that. So she basically wants to try this for her friend, to try and give her some fun, basically, because her last few relationships have been diabolical. So Grace, the main character, she kind of goes along with this just because she thinks that her friend Selena's crazy. So she goes along with it anyway, gets a bit drunk, and they have a bit of a laugh. And then, yeah, it turns out it wasn't fake, and there's a 2,000-year-old, like, warrior man who's been trapped in a book for a very long time, standing in a living room. So the story follows them. Basically, she wants to free him from his curse of being in this book. So you end up meeting like a bit of a cast of characters. You know, you meet her friend, and you meet her friend. You meet a couple of other people that will feature later on in the books. Obviously, the first time I didn't know that, but you meet, you know, the cast of characters. It's based in New Orleans, or New Orleans. I'm not really sure how to say that. So it's based there. So in the French Quarter. So you've got like quite a range of people. Some of them are batshit crazy, but they're a lot of fun. It's absolutely hilarious. Like, this book completely got me obsessed with like sort of paranormal romance type of books. I love the humour. It has me laughing out loud. I've read it like 4 times now, and I just think it's absolutely hilarious. So Sherilyn Kenyon's humour is brilliant. There's loads of pop culture references, which admittedly, you know, these books are older now, so you could say they're a little outdated, but it's all the right kind of culture for my age group, so I always smile when I see references to things. I just think it's hilarious. So that's the first one, and I would highly recommend it. Definitely a 5-star read. If you're not into sort of steamy love scenes, you probably won't like these books. It's not one of those things where there's absolutely no plot and all there is people getting it on everywhere, but there are sex scenes in books. If it's not your kind of thing, then that's totally fair. But they don't overtake the book. And the next one in the series is Night Pleasures. So this one is when they finally introduce the Dark Hunter. So this one follows a Dark Hunter called Curian of Thrace. So he's an ancient warrior that was betrayed and ended up dying a horrific death at the hands of his enemies, and so he sold his soul for his moment of vengeance. We're introduced to Curian and his squire Nick in this book, who Nick is hilarious. He's just so sarcastic and ridiculous, laugh out loud kind of territory. So basically, this book follows Curian, and the love interest this time is called Amanda Devereaux, and her sister basically goes around trying to stake vampires. Basically like an unofficial Buffy. She's kind of mental. All of her family are kind of mental, and all into kind of the supernatural and have crazy beliefs and things like that. So she's just Miss Normal and just wants to be... Is she an accountant? It's some random dull day-to-day. That's what she wants. She wants to have her normal day-to-day job, marry Mr. Boring, and live a quiet life, because she's grown up with this crazy family. So, as you do when you have a crazy sister, a crazy twin sister going around trying to kill people, yeah, there was a bit of mistaken identity. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of confusion between the Daemons and the Dark Hunters, because although the Dark Hunters are the good guys, they also appear more vampiric than the ones who actually could do with the staking. So basically, the Dark Hunter has been handcuffed to who they think is the unofficial Slayer, but it's her twin sister who wants nothing to do with that kind of stuff. It's a really good book. And you meet back with earlier characters, then you bring in characters that will come in later. So one of the characters that gets mentioned is called Talon, and he is an ancient Celt. And then, so his book is called Night Embrace. So I've read that one as well, and reread it recently, I should say. So basically, that one, he's one of the Dark Hunters who doesn't choose to live the life of luxury. He basically lives in a hut in the swamp, surrounded by alligators, because why wouldn't you? So he's not into that fancy life. He just likes things to be quite rustic. So that's his thing, and he gets into a bit of a sticky situation because he protects a human and ends up getting hurt, and she brings him back to her flat to make sure he's okay. And then obviously when he wakes up the next day in sunlight, freaks out, leads to hilarious situations basically. A really good fun read if you want a book that's like romantic, that will make you laugh out loud, you just get super sucked into and can't do anything else. This is definitely a series I would recommend. So the one I've actually read recently is Dragonswan. So this is a novella in this series. I'm not entirely sure where it's meant to be placed. I think it could be like in between one of those books I just spoke about, but it doesn't actually mention any of those characters, so you can kind of read it at any point, I think, but I'm not entirely sure when their story will become relevant. I kind of assume it will tie into someone else's book somewhere. Every one of these stories seems to connect together somehow. So that's the one I literally just finished reading today. It was quite short, it was just a novella, and this one followed a slight offshoot of the Dark Hunters, which are the Were Hunters. So this is a whole different kettle of fish. People that their either core form is an animal but they can take human form, or their core form is a human but they can take animal form. In the novella that I just finished, this is following a dragon version of this. So basically the character is a sort of a human man that has the ability to turn into a dragon, and his enemies are the dragons that have the ability to become human, because the two sides of this coin hate each other, absolutely hate each other. So in this novella we meet a man who has the ability to be a dragon. So he is trying to save his, so this man is trying to save his brother by trading a tapestry for his release. The tapestry is in a different time period, it's in modern day. The thing is about dragon shifters, we'll call them shifters just for ease, is that they can't live in modern times because of the electricity. So they all live in kind of like the Middle Ages, and just choose to stay there. And they have the extended lifespan, and they choose to stay in the Middle Ages and can jump around time during the full moon, and they can jump from place to place whenever they choose, really. So he's gone to modern times to get the tapestry that actually came from his time originally, to trade for his brother's release, and in doing so meets a human woman. Just decides, well, I'll take her back to the Middle Ages with me. So basically it's very short, it's very insta-lovey. There's not a lot of time to develop a lot of relationships here. I think all novellas could kind of follow that. But it does it well. It does do the story well. I mean, I'm biased. I love this series, so she'd have to do a really bad job for me not to like it. I would definitely say this is more of like a 3.5 star as opposed to like the 4.5, 5 star of the actual full-length novels, just because they have more time to establish that connection between the characters, and it's less, you know, having to fit everything. And the books aren't hugely long, you know what I mean? The full-length ones are hugely long, but the smaller ones just don't have the same time to form this connection. I wouldn't start off with it. I think if you're going to start reading these books, I would definitely start with one of the full-length novels. I would start with Fantasy Lover and move on there. I feel like if you just read Dragonswan quickly without really getting the feel for the books. It throws a lot of information at you really quickly. Like, this is a very fleshed out series, and obviously I know what's happened for the next few books ahead already, so I have more information than you would have were you just starting these books afresh. So, and I feel like if I was to read Dragonsworn without the knowledge of reading these other books, at least I think there's until the full-length novels actually introduce the Werehunters, which I think is like in 2 or 3 books time. So I would want to read this one, despite the fact it's in reading order earlier. I actually wouldn't want to read this one before you'd read book number 6. Literally looking at my bookshelf to figure this out. So yeah, it's technically 1.5 in the reading order, so you would do Fantasy Lover then Dragonsworn. But I wouldn't recommend reading it until after reading book 6, because that's the one that actually introduces the Werehunters properly and gives you a full description of everything. The only thing I would say is, obviously after reading that book, then there might be a lot of repetition in the explanation of the characters in the novella, because you need that information really to understand the story. And if you were to read that one on its own, you need this extra information, but if you were to read it after that discussion, you wouldn't need it. Novellas are a tricky business, especially if they're written after and then inserted into a reading order kind of a thing. By the way, I take my reading orders from the website Fantastic Fiction. That's what I use to base on the reading order. There may be other sources that say that there's a different reading order, but that's the one I'm going with. And that's the one I've always used to look at reading orders for these. So that is all the books I've read recently. A bit of a mixed bag of basically ones that I really, really liked and ones that I was less blown away by. But yeah, and also a mix of genres as well. But it's been a pretty good batch of books recently. That were my thoughts on those. Please let me know if you've read any of those, and let me know in the comments below. And subscribe if you want to see more of my bookish thoughts, alongside some writing vlogs, other things like that. So hopefully that'll be the kind of content that you'll see on my channel. So if you'd like to see more of that, then give me a like and subscribe to see more, and I'll hopefully catch up with you again soon. Bye!